WHGE 95.3 FM. Coming up, the Open Eye.
All right. Hey, Sherry.
Those of us that indulge in or commit intellectual violence don't do so for the pleasure of mental masturbation or ego diddling. We do so because the chains of oppression on our people's minds are deep and difficult to remove.
WHGE 95.3 FM. Good morning, my children of the sun. Welcome to the Open Eye. This is your host, Patrice Gibbs, right here on WHGE 95.3 FM. And as we always start our show, every generation has its purpose. Ours is to reveal the truth and reverse the brainwashing. And I'm pretty sure that's what you tune in for. That is what we do. You know what? I'm going to get my disclaimer out the way first. And I'm going to get them started. Special day today. Let me see. Here we go. Disclaimer. Oh, come on now. There we go.
The views and opinions expressed on Open Eye are those of the hosts, guests, and contributors, and do not reflect the policy or position of WHGE 95.3 FM, nor our sponsor, the Delaware Center for Homeless Vets. Any content provided by Open Eye's hosts, guests, or contributors are theirs and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, company, or individual.
All right. Today is a special day. Today is May 3rd. My great Aunt Janet would be, 17, I think she would be, 20, she would be 106 if she was alive today. My Aunt Janet was Uncle Richard's wife and my grandmother's younger sister. I was real lucky the way I came up because having Aunt Janet and Grandma was like having two grandmothers. Aunt Janet was like Grandma Junior, and she was something else. She was a real maverick, very knowledgeable of our history, and like her older sister, second generation Garveyite. That's her. And I tell you, she was something else in the community, a real queen of the village, and known for her stance on the advancement of our people. That's the way I was raised. That's the environment I was raised in. Very fortunate to be raised with an abundance of elders. All right. Let's keep on moving. This is from, got a lot today. This is from Kaba Kamini. Brother's a historian and what have you. I read this before. We learn by repetition. That's what he had to say. Brother Lawrence, I see Alan Lawrence, the host of the Weekend Review right here on WHGE 95.3 FM today at 4. Make sure you tune in. That's where Sister Denise, see Brother John, all right. Kaba Community says, as we begin to look at who we are as a people, as we look into the contributions of African people to the world, Dr. John Henry Clark often told us that the missing pages of world history is African history. I want you to understand the role that Africa has played in the shaping of our intellectual world. In terms of the things we have achieved as a people, you will begin to understand why there's a war on history. And when you deal with a war on history, you're doing more than that. What you have to understand and look at the work of Dr. Shank Anta Diop, the brilliant Senegalese scholar who wrote a book, The African Origins of Myth or Reality, Civilization or Barbarism, The Cultural Unity of Black Africa. Brother Vaughn. And as we develop his understanding, he said that for our people to oppress another people, he said for a people to oppress another people, this has nothing to do with African culture or European culture. This is people to people. If you want to oppress a people, there are three things you take from them. You take their history, you take their language, and you take their psychological factor. Their psychological factor are what we call VIPs. Dr. Leonard Jeffrey calls them the values, the interests, and the principles of a people. Take those from them. Take their history, take their language, take their values, interests, and principles, and then superimpose your history, your language, your values, history, and principles on them. And no matter what conclusion they come to and the challenge they face, they will always act in the interest of the oppressor that took their history, language, values, interests, and principles. So when we wonder why the choice we make never serves our best interests, you got to change the paradigm. You got to study your history. You have to study your language, your values, interests, and principles. And that's why you tune in to the Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. All right. This is Patrice Gibbs. Hey, Steve, I see you there. All right. This is another one, another teaching moment. It's from the late great Runoko Rashidi, Dr. Runoko Rashidi. It is something that is misinformation that he's correcting, that I've spoken about several times and what have you. Africa is not named after a Roman general. You've heard me say this before. If so, it is because I have pleasure to repeat it again and again with the hope that it will someday sink in. Lady D, I see you. Africa is not named after Roman general Scipio Africanus, nor is it named after Leo Africanus, a man who comes much later. These are myths. I repeat, these are myths. Scipio Africanus is the Roman general who engineered the defeat of the African nation called Carthage, centered in what is now Tunisia. Carthage was a colony from Phoenicia. It was established in 1814 BC. The Nile Valley was still thriving at this time, and the civilization called Nog, based in what is now Nigeria, was rising up. The Phoenicians themselves had an African mixture, and with the passage of time, Carthage itself became increasingly African. Carthage means the new town, and the most famous Carthaginian was General Hannibal Barca. The Romans called this entire area Africa. And so with the defeat of the Carthaginians, Scipio is given the name Conqueror of Africa. So Scipio Africanus does not give his name to Africa. He gets his name from Africa. You get it? Does it make sense to you? All right. Now, the man named Leo Africanus was himself an African. Indeed, his name means Leo the African. He got his name from Africa. He did not give his name to Africa. Now, before you tie yourself up in knots and begin to ask, Runoko Rashidi, what was the original name for the continent of Africa? Please ask yourself what makes you think that ancient people thought of themselves as living on continents. The notion of continents is a European notion, and it is a relatively recent one at that. The word Ethiopian is Greek. It means land of the burnt-faced people. And Akubalan does not even appear to be an African word. As a matter of fact, it's Arabic. So why not start looking at things from an African perspective? Why not use your own frame of reference? We need to spend more time educating each other. I try and do it each day. If the lion refuses to write his story, write his side of the story will always go in favor of the hunter. Africa. There was another understanding that Africa comes from ancient Kemet. Af meaning house, Ra meaning God, Ka meaning spirit. Africa, house of God's spirit. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. All right. Hey, it's just a reminder. Something I told you time and again. This is a reminder of how Christianity became so popular. Not by the quality of its information, but by the quantity of its violence. During the reign of Charlemagne, women were impaled on sharpened poles, put in through their private parts, through their vagina. Slowly over days, the pole would travel the length of the body through the organs, causing tremendous pain. Simply because a woman was found collecting herbs in the forest, she was labeled a witch. Their screams could be heard for days as an example to those who would not accept the foreign faith. Christianity became so popular because of sheer terror of what would happen if it wasn't accepted. And people think the Nazis were horrible. Until we can see the cross and the lynching tree together, until we can identify Christ with a re-crucified black body hanging from a lynching tree, there can be no genuine understanding of Christian identity in America and no deliverance from the brutal legacy of slavery and white supremacy. It's from Dr. James Cone. And something as we look at our history and what goes on or what has happened, it makes me think of the monuments that we place. For instance, the grave of Fred Hampton, the great leader of the Black Panther Party. Every year, his tombstone is shot up. The marker for Emmett Till had to be bulletproof because it was shot up. There's another marker in Memphis commemorating or recognizing the 1866 Memphis Massacre. On May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1866, miles of white men led by law enforcement attacked black people in areas near South Street aka Calhoun and G.E. Patterson. By the end of the attack, the mobs had killed an estimated 46 black people, raped several black women, and committed numerous robberies, assaults, and arson. A congressional investigation committee reported that 4 churches, 12 schools, and 91 other dwellings were burned. Although no one was ever prosecuted for this massacre, it became a rallying cry in the battle over the nation's reconstruction following the Civil War. Ultimately, the outrage that followed the massacre helped to ensure the adoption of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Yeah. And how did that come about? Well, there was a rumor that went around among whites that there was a full-scale black uprising in South Memphis. And so white mobs began forming, marched into South Memphis, and began indiscriminately shooting black men, women, and children. This went on for 36 hours. 36 hours. 3 days, actually. Until we change the landscape where these markers and these images are. There needs to be no compromise on what the reality was. None whatsoever. Because you got some people that want to say, oh, it was a race riot. No. No, it was not a race riot. It was a massacre. It was an attack by white supremacists on black people. No, they weren't dressed up in KKK robes. These were everyday white citizens, led by law enforcement. This is the reality that we deal with, and that we must not allow anyone to forget, no matter how much they want to burn books and hide our history. We didn't allow it then, we can't allow it now. WHGE 95.3 FM, The Open Eye. All right. Thank you for joining us today, Brother Jafar, and joining the Open Eye. But I want to remind you that the Open Eye is not the only show on WHGE 95.3 FM. At 3 o'clock, the Wilmington Renaissance with Samantha Ghetto Songbird Hollins. Great show, great guests. Don't want to miss it. Reviewing the week with Alan Lutz. I said at 4 o'clock on our schedule list. It's 5 o'clock. And of course, Black History Facts and Reflections, Harmon Carey. Moving right along on the Open Eye here. It's something we had covered and talked about. White supremacists desire to roll back the clock, and why and what they want to do. And the Orange Disaster is trying to turn civil rights upside down. And he's tried it with some of the biggest rollbacks since Reconstruction. The government under the Orange Disaster, under the Trump regime, is bending the arc of history in a new direction, away from civil rights focus of the past 60 plus years. Addressing or even acknowledging racial injustice toward people of color is out. Separating church and state is out. Exposing anti-Christian bias and being anti-woke is in. This is what the Orange disaster regimes wanted the Department of Justice Division, created by the landmark 1957 Civil Rights Act to defend America's rights, has a new mission: rooting out anti-Christian bias, anti-Semitism, and woke ideology. The head of the division, Harmon Dillon, recently told conservative commentator Glenn Beck that's their mission. I guess they would come after me, some of the things I say about Christianity, huh? And of course, they're not real Christians according to the faith, according to the Bible, what it's actually about. The fact that they call themselves Christian nationalists tells you everything you need to know about them. Because Christian nationalism is nothing but a dressed up word. It's not even a nice word. A dressed up word for white supremacists. Yeah. A majority of lawyers at the Civil Rights Division, people who got jobs there to ensure equal access to the ballot box, perhaps are expected to resign with pay until September. At a White House cabinet meeting, secretaries repeatedly sought praise from Trump for purging diversity efforts from the government. We're not organizing money based on the color of skin, said Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, referring to contracts counsel at the USDA. If you're having DEI policies, we're not going to fund your projects, said Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, bragging about how the administration will use taxpayer dollars that kill diversity efforts throughout the states. Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vogt told Trump the administration had forgiven a Chicago lender paid as part of a discrimination settlement. We've ripped wokeness out of the military, sir. DEI, trans, all that. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. They don't like that. And it's Fort Benning and Fort Bragg again at the Department of Defense, said Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, drunken bastard, referring to bases that again share names with Confederate generals. Now, these bases, the Confederate generals' names were removed, replaced with Union generals. They put the names back. The administration is also working to strong arm elite universities into dropping diversity, equity, and inclusion programs by threatening billions in funding, including for scientific research. Harvard so far has decided to fight back. But there are other examples, such as the fact that while the U.S. has stopped accepting refugees for the most part, it is accepting white South Africans who claim they are victims of racism in their country. Isn't that something? You apartheid peddling punks. Yeah. You'll no longer have the control of the government, though they control most of the resources still. That's not enough. Not since Reconstruction. And by the way, this comes from Zachary B. Wolf from CNN. It's a much larger pivot than simply changing hiring practices and stopping so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. This is certainly the biggest rollback of civil rights since Reconstruction, according to Mark Updegrove, a presidential historian and CEO of the LBJ Foundation. Trump's policies and the way he's orienting his government or his regime combine as an assault on the Great Society legislation Johnson pushed through in the 1960s, including the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. Okay? I want to mention something right here, right quick. For those so-called people of color, I don't mean black people, who have been able to immigrate here, you're welcome. Comparing the Orange regime's effort to purge the country of diversity efforts and deconstruct the Great Society legislation, Up the Grove drew a parallel between now and the period beginning during Reconstruction, when post-Civil War advances like the 13th Amendment were hurt by the rise of white supremacy and Jim Crow. We're seeing something very similar now, rolling back the advances of the 1960s. While those Great Society laws were meant to be temporary measures to create a more equal society, the U.S. is not there yet. So-called anti-wokeism is essentially permission to accept and practice racism. Cuts to Medicaid spending, higher education programs like Pell Grants or Head Start programs would also hurt efforts at making the U.S. a more equitable society. If you ultimately look at what the Orange disaster is doing, it is aimed at taking down the laws of the Great Society, which are effectively the foundation of modern America and the path to a plural democracy for the first time in our history. Yeah. While Trump's government is retreating from any effort by the federal government to pursue racial justice, it is leaning hard into ending what it sees as anti-Christian bias. Now, why would the country be anti-Christian? Because these Christian nationalists, first of all, are nothing but hypocrites. Second of all, they are not satisfied to practice their religion, but they plan to impose their religion on everybody else. And that's a problem. That's a problem. See? And you know what? This White House exploits faith for power, following a Christian nationalist playbook, which is damn near my Kampf. Don't get it mixed. These are nothing but a bunch of white supremacists. And to prove so, the Orange disaster throws red meat to MAGA voters by agreeing to shell out your tax dollars to the family of Ashley Babbitt. Who is Ashley Babbitt? That is the deranged insurrectionist who was shot and killed during the January 6th Capitol siege. I had to make sure to get that part in there, that she is deranged. She was determined to break in the Capitol, find Mike Pence and hang him. Yeah. What's going on there? Got something clicking there. Okay. The first thing the Orange disaster did was pardon the traitors, the January 6th insurrectionists. Now this. Lawyers working for Babbitt's family reached a settlement agreement with attorneys from the MAGA Justice Department and confirmed the deal in court today. While the amount of money has not been disclosed, any money at all is an insult to America's democracy. Babbitt was part of a violent mob that was trying to overthrow the government. They took their lives into their own hands the moment they stormed into that building. Ashley Babbitt was attempting to force her way into the speaker's lobby when she was shot. If she had succeeded, she and her fascist comrades might have gotten their hands on a Democratic lawmaker. If Capitol Police had not stood firm in the face of these Trumpsters, there's no telling what might have happened to members of Congress who were sheltering inside. It's unfortunate that an officer had to deploy deadly force, but he was justified in his actions. Justified in his actions. And has been cleared of any wrongdoing. The Orange Assets previously stated that he's a big fan of Ashley Babbitt, no crap, and thinks she was a really good person who was a big MAGA fan, which is a strong indication that she was anything but a really good person. Investigative reporter Jack Smith's new document shows that the Trump campaign paid for travel, hotels, expenses, and organizing efforts to bring outside radical organizers to the Capitol on January 6th. Trump and his lackeys planned the assault on the nation's capital. We need to drag his ass out right now. You know what I say about what I say last week? The so-called founding fathers, they'd have killed his ass by now. That's what they'd have killed his ass. Yesterday, the neoconservative David Brooks wrote in this op-ed in the New York Times, Trumpism is primarily about the acquisition of power. Power for its own sake. It is a multi-front assault to make the earth a playground for ruthless men. So, of course, any institutions that might restrain power must be weakened or destroyed. Trumpism is about ego, appetite, and acquisitiveness, and is driven by a primal aversion to the higher elements of the human spirit, learning, compassion, scientific wonder, and the pursuit of justice. What is happening now is not normal politics. We're seeing an assault on the fundamental institutions of our civic life, things we should all swear loyalty to, Democrat, Independent, or Republican. It's time for comprehensive national civic uprising. It's time for Americans in universities, law, businesses, nonprofits, and the scientific community and civil service and beyond to form one coordinated mass movement. Trump is about power. The only way he's going to be stopped is if he's confronted by some movement that possesses rival power. I'm really not a movement guy. I don't naturally march in demonstrations or attend rallies that I'm not covering as a journalist. But this is what America needs right now. And it's from a neoconservative, David Brooks. You know, mass movement. Yeah. But let me tell you something. Well, and let me run this by you. And this is from Sister Erica, calls her TikTok page Good for My Soul. Erica, Good for My Soul. She said, I just saw a video of 2 black women being arrested at one of those May 1st protests, the day before yesterday. And I'm sure there were others. There probably had been others across the country being arrested and detained. I have not seen them. My first time ever seeing any human being arrested at any of these protests that have been taking place for months across the country were 2 black women. And when I tell you there wasn't an ally in sight, there was no barrier or wall of protection between black bodies and police. There was nobody advocating on their behalf. There was nobody walking beside them, making sure that they stay safe in police custody. Understanding how black bodies are treated differently by law enforcement. There was nobody taking down their information to make sure that they were connected with their loved ones and released safely. None of that. I left a comment underneath the video and one of the organizers responded. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but her words were, they knew what they signed up for. And other people got arrested too. Now these allies have been, these so-called allies have been complaining loud and long during these protests. We're black people. How come black people aren't joining us? We'll look out for you. BS. Stay your black ass home. There's a reason that they are resurrecting deportation centers in El Salvador. It coincides with now U.S. citizens' ability to be deported when our asses get carted off at these protests, thinking that these so-called allies are going to be supporting and protecting black people. Where do you think this is going? These deportation centers, and who do you think is going to come to your aid? Nobody. Stay your black ass home. That's not a suggestion, that's a directive. Because these 2 black women that joined their friends at that protest, oh, they were walking next to their friends in a threatening manner. That's what happened. Oh, this big sea of white people out there, and they found them 2 black women, all right, put in zip ties and arrested. That was in Philly. Go look for the video. We've been tracking these Trump protests and commenting on how well the white protesters and the police are getting along. And when I saw the women in zip ties, the black women, I thought, what the hell are they doing there? Didn't they hear what we said? The hell are they doing there? The Trump administration wants to provoke a riot by black protesters so they can declare martial law. The constant rage baiting will not stop. I wasn't there, so I didn't see it. But the T says the police walked up to the 2 peaceful black women and a crowd of white people arrested them, and the crowd said nothing and did nothing. Just like when unidentified men dragged a woman out of a town hall. These protesters don't know how to care for each other. Because see, if you had been in a black protest, we'd have cut a duster about them coming up and snatching you off. Are you kidding me? Let me say it again. Stay your black ass home. When you come out, the authorities are walking past the white people and coming straight for you. Stay home and protest with your pocketbook and your words, not your bodies. Because somehow protesting while black evokes responses from authorities that are not evoked by white people protesting exactly the same way. Stay your black ass home. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. Patrice Gibbs here, your third eye optometrist. They don't listen. Nah, they don't listen. Nah, not when righteous people say what they say. All right? They don't listen. War is a racket. That's not new. We didn't just find that out. Where we learn that from? From Major General Smedley D. Butler, U.S. Marine Corps, two-time winner of the Congressional Medal of Honor, told us war is a racket. Told us that in 1935. 90 years ago. It is possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious. It is the only one international in scope. It is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. A racket is best described, I believe, as something that is not what it seems to be to the majority of people. Only a small inside group knows what it's really about. It is conducted for the benefit of the very few at the expense of the very many. Out of war, few people make huge fortunes. Back in 1935, retired United States Marine Corps Major General Smedley D. Butler wrote a book after a rousing speech he gave, titled War is a Racket. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. War is a racket. Yeah. The United States chose war over progress. Now you're collapsing. Oh, why you wasted trillions fighting endless wars in the desert? China was building. They built factories, railroads, satellites, and global alliances. You build military bases, prisons, graves. That's what you invested in. China invested in the future. You reinvested in bombs, oil, and debt. Now your bridges collapse. Your cities rot. Your youth drown in drugs and despair. You wonder what happened? You sold your soul for quarterly profits and handed your future to war contractors in Wall Street. You're not just in decline, you're in free fall. Morally bankrupt, economically hollow, socially broken. This isn't a superpower. It's an empire in ashes. WHGE 95.3 FM, The Open Eye. Patrice Gibbs here, your third eye optometrist. We have a traitor in our midst. Yeah. As African people, we have a traitor in our midst. General Michael Langley, Commander AFRICOM. You see the video? He pretty much straight up admitted that he's a jackal. Now, what is a jackal? Okay, let me explain. When you have an African country, a country in South America or the Middle East, that have leadership that is interested in the well-being of its people. The West, America, Europeans, they will send in those that purport to help them with loans from the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Yeah, and this money is not meant to go to the well-being of the people. It is used to pay off or bribe or turn leaders in those developing countries against their own, to convince them to profit for themselves. Now, when they get a leader that's not with that won't take the loans, they send in the jackals. The first thing the jackals do is they permeate the country with propaganda against that leader. And if that doesn't work, and it doesn't turn the people against that leader, then they send in the military. Because the propaganda has already set the stage. Okay? The propaganda has already set the stage and trying to convince the people. This is a age-old tactic they've been using for decades. They put the leader in a really bad light. He's doing nothing but lying in his pockets, and the people are going hungry, and that's his fault. Never mind that the jackals are there to steal the resources. That's all General Langley is. Got right up there and said Captain Touré is protecting Burkina Faso's gold mines. To line his own pockets for his own protection. Mm-hmm. Many black people in America, and those of you that are outside of the American diaspora, know this. He is not one of us. I don't care how dark his skin is. You just look in his face and you see jackal written all over it. So the jackals go in and they assassinate the leader. And then they get a puppet and put him in charge. Like I said, this is an age-old tactic. Well, it's not working this time. Not against Captain Ibrahim Touré. It's not working. Mm-hmm. Because he, along with his Sahel allies, Mali and Niger, they're running the Europeans out, specifically the French. Mm-hmm. And on April 30th, across the globe, Africans on the continent and throughout the diaspora, Africans in France, you should have seen the turnout in Paris. Now, if the West eliminates this young man, talking about Ibrahim Touré, or destabilizes Burkina Faso, there will be a civil unrest across the globe, especially in Africa, which will result in an unprecedented revolution by the African masses. This shouldn't be underestimated. Hands off of Burkina Faso. The United States through AFRICOM, which General Michael Langley, is the commander of, accused Captain Ibrahim Touré of using Burkina Faso's gold reserves for personal protection rather than the welfare of his people. Well, if he took some of that gold and used it for personal protection, considering the record of the West, I'm all right with that. I'm all right with that. Now, Russia has reportedly sent special forces trained with unique skills to Burkina Faso with explicit instructions from Putin to safeguard the presidency of Burkina Faso, as well as Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Yeah, run them up out of there. Let me tell you something. These psychopaths from the West, they must think African people are crazy on the continent or throughout the world. Because let me tell you what Emmanuel Macron of France said, the president of France. He said, if we leave African countries to manage their own, now is not the time. Africa remains the least developed continent, and history shows we have a role to play in supporting its growth. A complete withdrawal could halt progress. There is still much work for us to do in Africa, and we believe they are not fully ready to thrive without their involvement. You paternal son of a bitch. Would you think we haven't been paying attention? Do you think we don't know the history of France? You said leaving would halt the progress? France has been there for over 100 years. And they've done nothing but steal African resources. They're nothing but a colonizer. Africa has no need, no use for them. Absolutely none. Out your damn mind. A complete withdrawal will halt progress. A complete withdrawal would push progress. Because one thing Ibrahim Traoré understands is how to manage a state, and he understands that better than any of you goddamn Europeans. Out your damn mind. Now, Burkina Faso just did something bold among the other reforms that Ibrahim Traoré has done. Something that the diaspora didn't even know they were craving this deeply. They cracked the door wide open and said, come home. No red tape, no overpriced tourist visas, no hoops, just an invitation, raw, real, revolutionary. Whether your roots were dragged across oceans or scattered by strategy. If you carry African blood, you can now carry a pass to land where your ancestors once stood tall. This isn't about travel, it's about transformation. For African Americans, for Caribbean kin, for the displaced and the dreaming. Burkina Faso is signaling something powerful. You belong. And for the builders, the visionaries, the entrepreneurs, their canvas is yours. Paint something your ancestors would be happy to dance to. That's right. Yes, indeed, Brother Steve. Haiti had to pay France reparations after the Haitians had a successful revolution and gained independence. It should have been the other way around. And the Haitians are demanding their money back right now. They said, to hell with this. Came here, stole our resources, stole our labor, murdered us, and we had to pay you for the privilege of our oppression. When we just got a little free and kicked your sorry ass out, you surrounded us with warships and demanded reparations, which was paid over years, over decades, for more than a century. Billions of dollars, and Haiti said, give me my goddamn money back. Well, you should. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Yeah, and don't get it mixed, okay? France has been the worst enemy on the African continent. Don't get that mixed. Now, what a lot of nerve Macron has. He said that Africans were ungrateful. Ungrateful for what? Ungrateful for you stealing their resources? The hell out of here. You know, I heard Shahid Bison, I think, King Bison, he made a point that Africa's progress had been retarded by the West, by force. They stopped the progress of Africa by force. And then they turn around and tell, they can't make progress without us. I'll be damned. You keep telling the world Africa is poor. Africa is so poor. Why do white asses get mad when African leaders tell them they got to go? Africa doesn't need to import anything. Africa has all the resources it needs. That's why Ibrahim Traoré has been able to make the reforms he has made.
How much longer?
Designed a new currency, a phone application that replaces paper money, eliminates the use of French currency, free education, $200 a month stipend for college students, free health care. He created food agricultural processing plants, thousands of reconstruction projects and new homes. And most importantly, 200 billion of sweet crude oil was recently discovered in Burkina Faso. An estimated $3 trillion in value, more than enough to turn Burkina Faso into a modern city, a smart city. Yes. That's right. Tell you something, I see this African brother make a point. And this is for those of you that call yourself FBA, Foundational Black Americans, Pretendians, and Hebrew Israelites, and Moors, and Jamaicans, and Dominicans, and anybody outside of the continent, anybody in the diaspora, and throughout the continent. We are not Pan-Africanizing enough. We are not Pan-Africanizing the reparation struggle. So you find African Americans are fighting for reparations on their own. Africans in Europe are fighting for reparations on their own. Haitians are fighting for reparations on their own. Africans in South America are fighting for reparations on their own. And Africans on the continent are fighting. You're fighting for it on your own. And we face the same white supremacy. Why don't we unite as a global African race and fight for reparations from a united front? Therefore, if one of us gets shortchanged, we have each other's back. If African Americans are getting shortchanged by white people in America, we have their back. Brother in Africa talk. We as Africans, we get to say, You guys are not giving African Americans exactly what they asked for. So you can't have none of our gold, none of our cocoa, and you can't have none of our coltan. That's the brotherly love that we need to have as an African global race. We are stronger together. We are stronger together. That's how the reparation struggle can be very powerful. And that's how we will intensify the struggle. And that's how we will get exactly what we are owed. Yes, exactly what we are owed. Because family, as Brother Renoko Rashidi said, I am a Pan-Africanist. And I have been all my life. I follow the teachings of such men and women as Marcus and Amy, Jacques Garvey, Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, Shank Dion, Kwame Ture, known as Stokely Carmichael, Malcolm X, Stephen Biko, John Henrik Clark, Walter Rodney, Thomas Sankara, Peter Tosh. It may take generations to achieve, but that is the goal that we must establish. Indeed, the harder and longer the struggle, the sweeter the victory. This does not mean that we ignore the plight of Africans in America and any other place. Okay? It means that we become a global struggle. I am a Pan-Africanist. Yeah. WHGE 95.3 FM. Coming to a close, y'all. Patrice Gibbs, your third eye optometrist here. You ever wonder about Karens? And Kens, it's the male version of Karens. Why they behave like that? What is on their mind? Who do they think they are anyway? Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you something here. White people believe that they are deputized to control the movements of black people. This is actually what existed after the Civil War with the creation of black codes, where black people could be questioned by any white person and asked to show their papers, show their employment, showing that they're employed, that a white person employed them, and that therefore they had the right to be on a public road. That's how they used to try to police us after the Civil War. After we were theoretically free from slavery, they created these state codes and city ordinances that controlled our conduct. And that's what you see when you see, you know, all these people that call 911 on black people having a barbecue or standing outside their house or whatever they're calling about. Just going to a swimming party. Teenagers going to a swim party it's the fundamental belief of most white people that they have the right to question a black person's legitimacy and essentially ask that black person to show their freedom papers, essentially to show that they have the right to enter this building or to be in this hallway or to be in this space. That you have the right to be in this building where you work. All right? But it is directly connected to that idea of freedom papers. After slavery, in which white people basically deputized themselves to be able to question black people. In 2011, now this will quote right here from Colin Kaepernick. He taught us that in 2011, Kelly Williams Bowler spent 9 days in jail for sending her daughters to a high-performing school outside her district. She had unknowingly broken the law called boundary hop. In the land of opportunity, that law is meant to make sure poor, underprivileged folk know better than educate themselves without a white man's stamp of approval. America promises equal opportunity to everyone, no matter who you are. You can go to a good school, get a great job, live in a great house, but none of that is possible without that white man's stamp of approval. Don't believe me? I can prove it to you. You can get a good job earning a living wage without a white man's stamp of approval. Make it minimum wage. He would have you work 140 hours a week, or better, put 24 hours a day, 6 days a week to earn a living wage. Now, if that makes you go into work tomorrow and ask your boss for a raise, be prepared. You're probably going to need that white man's stamp of approval to get it. So now you want to buy a house and you have to get a loan. I think you can see where this is going. In 2015, 27.4% of black applicants were denied mortgages, more than twice that of white applicants. And when black applicants were approved, they usually pay higher interest rates. The top lenders, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Quicken Loans, want to take a guess who runs these companies? As long as we need that white man's stamp of approval, our fate will be in hands of those who may not think we qualify. Some people will say the system is broken. I'm here to tell you it was intentionally built this way. The white man's stamp of approval. WHGE 95.3 FM. Open eye. All right. I'm Patrice Gibbs, right here on the Open Eye, your third eye optometrist. All right, hope you learned something today. I learned something before I got here. And as we always tell you, destiny determines who enters your life, but you decide who stays. Therefore, value those who value you, and don't treat those as a priority. Treat you as an option. This is Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs. Thanks for joining me. All right. You been paying attention? See all them people out there marching in protest of the West plan to invade Burkina Faso? Global Africa supremacy. Millions of black people out there. We are not the minority. Global Africa supremacy is coming. Peace.